Hi, friends. It's October. It's time for another Wolfpack Warriors update. While I'm just giving a few seconds, there is a question below. If you could donate $1 million to charity, which charity would you choose? So while I'm giving people just a minute to log on, you can put your thoughts in the comments. I've mentioned before that I do this partly because I don't love just talking at a screen by myself, and it just makes me feel like people are with me on this. And as the Wolfpack Warriors is a foundation, this is something that I actually may get some ideas from people. If you could donate $1 million to charity, which charity would you choose? Now, you can pick anything. We know the Wolfpack Warriors, our foundation supports access to the outdoors and athletics. It supports families in their or kids in their families, and it also supports women. Pretty broad, but your charity that you tell me about doesn't need to fit under any of those. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're having a chance to listen to this. My name is Christy Wolfe, along with my partner Donna Zazalek. We're the director of special initiatives and this is the Wolfpack Warriors October update. I am going to start with a land acknowledgement because this has been something that we've started talking about in the group. So we respectfully acknowledge that the Wolfpack Warriors Foundation's head office is located on the traditional territories of all the Treaty 7 peoples. We honor these lands as well as all of the other First Nations, Métis, and Inuit lands and territories on which we live, work, and play. In the coming weeks, you're going to see that go up just in the footer of the Wolfpack Warriors website, and just an acknowledgement of where we are and what we're doing here. I wanted to take a few minutes to also show you a little bit of the new website again. So I'm just taking a second to share my screen. Just one of the windows. Here it is. So this is the Wolfpack Warriors website. Let me scroll on the right page. Our most recent event was Shoot Past Support. I'll tell you a little bit about that in our good news stories today. But I did want to mention this is where you can find which local registered charities that the Wolfpack Warriors can work with. Again, pretty broad. Access to the outdoors and athletics, children and their families, women's education and leadership is how we focused it there. And then I want to draw your attention to these icons again. This is what we do: give, amplify, and connect. And I'm saying that very clearly because of something that I will ask you later. While I'm on this website, I also wanted to show you and just remind you, especially with our question today about where would you donate $1 million, I just clicked on who we are and I went down to the organizations. I believe I showed this last time, but this is really what I want to hear from people. This is a spot where you can suggest a charity. It's a Google form. It just gives me the information about the charity that you would like us to know about. So maybe you're putting something in the comments, because I have seen SPCA or AARCS, which I'm not sure what that is, Michaela, but I will look it up after. I'm sure I can find it. And I also have Ellen on here saying, considering the cost of living, I would suggest anything related to food banks. Ellen, really appreciate that. And I will touch on that in a minute. But if those are important to you, suggest it. Fill out the form. Let me know. I keep track of that. I keep coming back to it. We bring it to the board of directors to let them know what people are thinking, because this is something that we want input from everybody. The other option on this website is the apply to work with us spot. And that would actually be an organization who would fill that out. So this is for one of our larger initiatives where we've got a bit more money to give. So if there's a charity that you volunteer with, you're on the board of, your family member works there, you've been supported by them before, let them know about it, because that's, again, a way that I can bring ideas to the board of directors so that we can get some other organizations across Alberta that we can connect with and support in different ways. So I did want to show you both of those things. I mentioned the current initiative. So I'm going to go back to our homepage. On our homepage, our banner will always be the current initiative, or the one that's recently finished before we get the next one up and running. But Shoot Past Support was just happening. This was really focused in Edmonton, and it was in support of those individuals and families experiencing domestic violence. It supported the Jessica Martel Memorial Foundation and Wynn House specifically. So those two organizations came together. They decided to plan an event, and this event, Shoot Past Support, raised $90,000 to date. They're still doing some counting. They're still doing some numbers, but $90,000 from that event last weekend. It had a wing night in Edmonton, and then on the Saturday there was 2 hockey games. One was the MacEwan University Griffins hockey team versus University of Alberta Pandas, the 2 women's teams. And then after that, it was the Edmonton Police Association Blues and the Oilers alumni. So they had a pretty good turnout. It was the first year they've done this. They did raise some money, and there was a lot of collaboration. And that was something that really drew our attention to this initiative, that it was groups of people coming together for a similar cause, and the money is all going back to Wynn House and Jessica Martel Memorial Foundation. So I did want to share that. A couple more good news stories that I want to just share quickly. Project All In, who we worked with at the beginning of the year, one of the big things that they are doing is a retreat in Tofino to bring first responders together, to do some healing, to do just some work together, because PTSD in first responders is something that we've learned through Chad from Project All In is really prevalent. I really love following what these guys have been up to. And in this particular Instagram post, they were talking about, these are the participants that were in this workshop this year. Definitely go take a look at their social media. I'll link it into our newsletter so that you can kind of find it easily and go find out more. But that project, or that retreat, just ran, and it was, I talked to Chad yesterday. It was really successful. This was a smaller thing that happened recently. Rocky Mountain Adaptive is an organization that we supported last year before we were a foundation. And we did a small give this year when they had a retreat, a women's retreat for the Bowhead bikes specifically. And so they had 9 women come to Canmore with flow retreats, and some were learning it, some had their own bikes, is what I understand. There's kind of variety, and it was just a chance to bring people together. Again, something that I think is really important. You guys have probably learned from me how much I think that collaboration piece is really there. So Rocky Mountain Adaptive was letting a lot of people know about this, and also all of their athletes were sharing a lot, and I thought that was really interesting. One more thing I want to show you before we go any further. It's a little video, how to have a real talk about domestic abuse. Recognize, empathize, ask, and listen. It's about a moment between 2 people. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Maybe I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. And I'm actually going to bring on Carolyn Mitchell. Carolyn Mitchell is one of the members of the team of Sagesse. I've had to practice saying that a few times. I mix it up regularly. And she's here with us today because our Q3 initiative was all about supporting individuals and families experiencing domestic abuse. Carolyn works at Sagesse. See, Carolyn, I said I was going to mess it up, and I did. Sagesse. I'm thinking say yes in my head, but that's probably not a good way to think about it. And why don't you introduce yourself and introduce Sagesse to everybody?
Sure, of course. So hello, everyone. My name is Carolyn. We do come from Sagesse. We're an organization dedicated to working to disrupt systems and structures of domestic abuse in Alberta. And at Sagesse, I work as their Real Talk program coordinator. So that clip that you showed there, it's funny, I hadn't seen it yet. I really like it. But that is what I do, is try and have those real conversations with groups all across Alberta. And I'm super excited that you invited me here today to talk a bit more about Sagesse and who we are in this Real Talk program. So thank you.
So why don't you start with that? What is, actually, even before you do Real Talk, will you tell us a little bit about the other programs and how long Sagesse has been around?
Definitely. So Sagesse, we've actually been around for over 30 years. We actually initially we were called Peer Support Services for Abused Women until about 7 years ago, where we rebranded to Sagesse because it better reflected all the different work that we did. But we started over 30 years ago because we recognized that there's a really big gap in the domestic violence sector where people were leaving shelters, people were leaving those formal services, and there weren't supports available to continue to support them after they left shelters. So people were leaving feeling really isolated, feeling like they had no one to talk to, and continuing to work through these experiences of domestic abuse. So Say Just came together and began these peer support groups where people could come together with other people who had past or current experiences of domestic abuse and get that kind of connection and support from other people who are going through something kind of similar. And we have just grown and grown and grown since we started that programming. Like I said, over probably almost 35 years ago at this point.
Okay.
And yeah.
I'm just going to interrupt you because I actually found out about Sagesse through the Canadian Women's Foundation. When we were researching what we could do, the board of directors had kind of suggested we'd like to do something around domestic violence and women's shelters, and can you find out more? So I started looking into the Canadian Women's Foundation, and you guys had received a grant from them, I believe, and it just piqued my attention, and that's where I first found out. So I just wanted to give a little shout out there because that's big stuff.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, things like that are always really exciting for us and just gives us opportunity to do more of the work that we're doing and lets us, people learn about us differently because lots of people
Mhm.
haven't heard about Say Just. So I appreciate that.
And we also, just for everybody's information, Sagesse and Carolyn in particular was with us at Wolfe Calgary when there was a staff lunch one day. So she was one of the people that was there, just kind of giving out some information. So you might actually recognize her. And then I'll stop interrupting you.
You
Go.
can keep interrupting me whenever you have questions. I can talk a little bit more about the different programming that we do. Really, we try and do so, like on broad scale, what we do is we support individuals who have experienced or are experiencing abuse. We also try and challenge social norms. We advocate for large scale societal changes as well. So, just to go into a bit more detail, our peer support groups, we know that they make people, or not, the peer support groups don't, but experiencing domestic abuse can make people feel really isolated. And so, just really being able to connect with others who speak the language, that can empathize with the experiences, that can provide community and understanding are unbelievably valuable. And so our peer support programs are open for anyone who's been impacted by domestic abuse, people who are at risk of being abused, if they're informally supporting someone else. Really, all areas around it are ways that people can get involved with those peer support programming.
And they can do it across the province, right? You don't have to be in Calgary. How does it work?
Not at all.
Okay.
I appreciate you pointing that out because I missed that part. Is we do work across Alberta, so we're not just Calgary. Our head office is in the city of Calgary, but we recruit partnerships with different organizations and communities across the province to be able to run peer support programming in person in all different communities across Alberta, and we also offer it virtually as well. To make it accessible for really anyone in any way we can. So yes, not just Calgary.
Well, and that was a big point that I wanted to bring up because a lot of our people are in Edmonton, and so I did your Real Talk webinar, which was virtual, and it just really impacted me, and I wanted to get the word out a little bit more about if there are people that could be supported with just knowing how to talk about domestic abuse. So maybe jump into Real Talk now. Tell us more about that program in particular.
Absolutely. And that's the other big bucket of work that we do is our capacity building work, which is exactly where Real Talk fits into it, which is really just trying to offer opportunities for anyone across Alberta to learn how to recognize, respond, and prevent abuse in any way possible. And that's where Real Talk comes in. And that was really important to us. Real Talk was born out of research that found that when people are experiencing domestic abuse, they typically don't talk to what we call formal supports first, right? Like people don't typically call Say Just until they're, am I glitching?
No, you do it occasionally, but don't worry about it. We know this happens
Okay.
all the time. You're fine right now.
All right. I just was like, this was super weird. But good. If you can still hear me, then we're fine. So yeah, we found that people don't talk to formal supports first. They don't talk to Sagesse first. Typically, people won't immediately go make a report to police services. We know that actually 80% of the time, people talk to their informal supporters first, and
Mhm.
that's friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, even doctors, lawyers, different kinds of healthcare professionals. Really, all of these different people that we build relationships with, we build trust and safety with, whether that's our closest friend or maybe just a doctor we see every 6 months for checkups. Those are people that we get to know and will typically receive those disclosures around domestic abuse
Yeah.
first because we trust them a little bit more. And so Real Talk was about, okay, we need to offer opportunities for everyone to learn. How do I recognize when it's happening? What does it mean? And how do I support people if I know or suspect they're experiencing it, which is what Real Talk aims to do.
Yeah.
So like you saw in the video, REAL is actually an acronym. So it stands for talking about how you recognize domestic abuse. And that section to me is really important because it's about deconstructing a lot of the myths around domestic abuse as well. Of what does it mean? What does it look like? And how can I recognize it? Because there is, I think, that ongoing idea that it only looks like physical signs of violence. It only looks like a bruise. It only looks like the things you see in media or movies. But we at Sagesse, and I know across the sector as well, really push for people to broaden that perspective and look at controlling behaviors of coercive controlling behaviors in particular. That's language that's growing more and more, I think, globally, of looking at all the different ways someone will control another person, instill fear, hold power in lots of different ways that can actually have sometimes a greater impact and be even more dangerous than any kind of physical violence in the first place. So we really try to start with that understanding about what does it look like, and what are some of the maybe biases or myths that we hold that maybe we can broaden just a little bit.
Well, and I just on that point, because I think who domestic violence happens to is something like that comes up as well. I've found as we've talked more and more about domestic violence, people just are like, well, this is about women. Well, no, it's not about women. Like, and it doesn't just happen for women, and all genders can experience this. And I think I actually just want to bring up the fact that your name, tell us about the pronouns you put after and why you do that.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that. So at Sagesse, in all of our email signatures, whenever we have like a Zoom call where we can add anything or change our names, we put our pronouns for countless reasons, but just at its core, it promotes inclusivity of allowing people who identify with different genders, different sexualities. If people identify as transgender or non-binary, it allows them space to maybe change their own name in the title just so that we can properly refer to the pronouns that they prefer themselves. It's also a very visual signal, which is I think what I really appreciate doing it is if someone sees in my name that I include my pronouns, it signals me as a safe person where they know if I go up to this person and say I actually refer as they them pronouns, they don't have to be worried that I'm maybe going to judge them for it or I'm going to react negatively because
Yeah.
I've signaled that no, I include my pronouns as well because I think that's important for people to know that I'm a safe person and this is something I encourage and promote and would always be inclusive for anyone who identified in whatever way they need or want.
I appreciate that because I have had questions from people about, well, if it's she, her, and that's what it looks like, then why would I need to put that? So you really clearly just explained that. Okay, again, I'll stop interrupting. Let's go back to the real acronym and keep going there.
All good. So yeah, going back to the real acronym and just really highlighting that language of coercive control, which if you ever want to take the real talk, you can learn much, much more about, and we'll talk about how you can take it later. But really being able to know that recognizing isn't super straightforward. It can be really subtle. But there's certain things we can maybe observe, like controlling behaviors, recognizing fear that makes us feel like, oh, I wonder if something is happening. I should ask this person if they are okay because that's
Yeah.
all we're really trying to get at is ask the question and see if they want to talk, which is where the rest of it goes. We're talking about how do you empathize with someone who's been impacted by it? How can we maybe understand there might be factors that make them want to stay or need to stay in relationships, even while there's abuse occurring? What kind of questions can we ask to be really supportive? What are the responses that can really make a difference? And we talk about the importance of listening without judgment and the important part of listening in terms of healing for someone who's experiencing domestic abuse as well.
Well, and I
And
think that a lot of what you're talking about right here is regardless of domestic violence, those skills are incredibly important for all of these stories that people are coming forward with. Um, a lot of our team knows that we have a medical kit, and so that caregiver side of and the parenting side, to me, this speaks to so many different areas. Domestic violence, absolutely, and then I can also see just recognize, empathize, ask, and listen as skills across the board. And so that's one of the things that I really liked about this as well.
totally, and I appreciate that, and I think sometimes it can be a, "Oh, this seems really straightforward, it seems like I know what to do," and it's like, you can use it in so many different conversations, and then taking it and applying to domestic abuse really specifically is just the approach Real Talk takes, but you're absolutely right, it's
Yeah.
those kinds of skills and that kind of approach can be applied in so many different ways, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so when is the next Real Talk webinar?
The next Real Talk, so I'm going to talk about a few different ways people can
Okay.
participate. We have the public workshops, which Christy took as well, so she can vote, give a vote of confidence for us that they're worthwhile taking. But we offer them every 2 weeks, so like these 90-minute public sessions that anyone can drop in and listen and learn a little bit more about how you can get real. The next one's actually coming up on this Wednesday, October 19th, starting at 10 a.m. You can visit our Real Talk website or find us on Facebook to get to the Eventbrite link to get all registered, or you feel free just to get in touch with Sagesse and we can direct you where to go. We also have the next one coming up on November 1st. If for some reason Wednesday is just too short notice and you can't make it, we have one that's going to be happening over the lunch hour. So if you're lonely and feel like you want someone to listen to while you're eating your lunch, you can drop in and do that as well. I also just really like to emphasize that we offer these workshops for like private communities or organizations, book clubs. If there's anyone in your communities that you think would really benefit or really want to take this kind of workshop, feel free to get in touch with us as well, and we can come to your specific group or community, whoever that might be across the province as well.
I appreciate that, and it made me think about a whole bunch of different things, so I won't I won't go too far down that rabbit hole. Will you
Yeah.
also tell us about the Disruptive Social coming up?
Absolutely. So our Disruptor Social is coming up on October 30th. It is our annual fundraiser at Sagesse, and this year we're calling it the Disruptor Social. So where this comes from, and I'm sure I'm going to talk about the best that I can, but we at Sagesse, we work with and admire lots of different individuals who have challenged our thinking, who've got at our work and helped us dream bigger and work differently. And so at our Disruptor Social, we want to really spotlight stories, people who've radically changed our lives, and really just have a moment to celebrate with food and drink, silent auction, music, entertainment, and really just encourage that disruption and that innovation that we hold near and dear to us at Sagesse. So it is going to be on October 30th at 6 p.m. We are still having our tickets sold. Again, you can find us on Facebook, on our website, and find the tickets there. And to make it a little extra fun, we encourage everyone come, as we're saying it, dressed for disruption. So if you have in mind a really disruptive idea, a person, whether that's fictional or historical, who you think really represents disruption or movements that are really powerful, and come dressed as it, there will be costume prizes for the person who best reflects that like disruptive costume idea as well.
I am going along with Sarah on the board of directors, and I am like, what am I going to wear? So if anybody on our team has ideas about what I can wear as disruptor, please let me know. Um, that would be awesome. Carolyn, I'm going to remove you from the screen. I'm going to finish out. Feel free to stay on. I'd love to chat with you for a few minutes after.
Of course.
And thank you so much for giving us your time and all of your energy.
Thank you.
All right, team. So Carolyn Mitchell of Sagesse, I will include some links in our takeaway, but I've learned a lot from that organization and I'm really excited to, I don't know, maybe work with them some more. I did want to mention a few additional things. We are trying out a new newsletter format, so it was a little bit fancier and hopefully caught people's attention. As well, our newsletter went up, just the text version of it went up on the ADP landing page. So if you saw either of those and you've got any feedback, I would love to hear it. We just want to make it a better and better. So that's one of the things on my list. Last month, We asked a question. It involved Lace Up and Leash Up. And Ravi Kumar, you are the proud new owner of a Wolfpack Warriors sweatshirt. So if you can send me your size, I will get that sent off to you. The next sweatshirt giveaway, here's how you get in on this. You need to tell me what the 3 icons are on the Wolfpack Warriors homepage. I made a very clear point of talking about it when I first opened up this, but all you have to do is go over to Wolfpack Warriors page, tell me those 3 words, and then you're in the draw for the next sweatshirt. Now, I have to tell you, Ravi was actually the only person who could win this one because everybody else had already won once. So we're getting the same people responding. So if you haven't responded yet, you could probably win the sweatshirt just by looking at the Wolfpack Warriors website and sending it to me. You could put it in the comments right now. You could send me an email. It doesn't have to be right from the live recording. It could be from the takeaway. And I've got to find a way to put that in the newsletter so we get more names in the draw. Last thing is our next Wolfpack Warriors update is November 21st. As always, if you have any questions, contact Donna or myself, and we are happy to chat with you about what's going on and what's coming up. But friends, thank you so much for joining.